And so Paul writes to the church that was struggling. We know about the Corinthians that it was actually the hub. It was like the Johannesburg city. And there was so much trade going on. And there were philosophers. And the new believers were at risk of trading with their faith. And so Paul writes to them at this point. He says in verse 8, so 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8. We think, and I'm reading from the NLT version, we think you ought to know this, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble that we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure. And we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely only on God who raises the dead. And He did rescue us from mortal danger. And He will rescue us again. We have placed our confidence in Him, and He will continue to rescue us. I'd like to share the scripture with everyone today who is struggling with what we are going through as a people. With the fact that we are enduring so much. We are losing so much. We are losing so many people. And it feels like God has left us. And it feels like we will not survive this. It is a season that we have never experienced in our lifetime, in our generation. And at the moment, it feels like we will not be able to get through this. But Scripture has been given to us in order to assure us of the enduring presence of God in every generation, in every life, in every season. And I'm hoping that the Scripture is going to assure us as a family, but as families, as a community, as a nation, that no matter how hard this moment is, and no matter how desperate the season is, and no matter how crushed we feel right now, and no matter how depressed we are, and no matter how much strength we have lost, and it feels like we are certainly all going to die, let us take heart and know that God has always, always, always come through for His people. God has always, always come through for His people. And Paul here says, we actually expected that we would die. But here's what their expectation did. Instead of being desperate and saying, "Pelile ngathi," he says, in that moment of anguish, as a result of that, we stopped relying on ourselves. We stopped relying on ourselves. So there was something about this moment. The Bible doesn't tell us what it is, but we know what the apostles went through, and we know what Paul went through. But there's this particular moment that they went through, where it felt like it is something that they'd never seen, that they'd given up. Even the apostles had fear. But this fear that they had, and this moment that they experienced, gave birth to something else in them. And so when Wanga said yesterday, there's something about my father's death that has given rise to something else in my heart, in my spirit, about my faith. It did that for the apostles. Paul says, as a result of this, we stopped relying on ourselves, and we learned to rely only on God who raises the dead. This is a moment that we have to treasure and say, no matter how many people we are losing, God will rescue us. He will come through to us. He will come through for us. But secondly, no matter how quickly we are losing them, and no matter how painful it is to lose them, we believe in God who raises the dead. We believe in God, in the God of resurrection. And I hope that, like this man, this is something that we are going to hold on to and not trade with. At a time where kuna mathemba, at a time where there are so many philosophies, at a time where there are many religions, at a time where there are many options for us to believe in, at a time where we are seeking our roots, may we know that there is only one hope, and that hope is God. And He is our help in a time of need. I want to thank God for my uncle's life. I want to thank God for carrying him through. I want to thank God for the blessed assurance, the salvation, the heritage that he had in his heart, in his soul, that could never be taken away from him. Hamba kahle malume, usikhonzele phambili.